because okay, shoulders, like what about shoulders? Do you want to stretch them? Do you want to strengthen them? What part of your shoulders? Like, do you want to like work on opening your chest or bringing strength to that area? So I just wanted to bring that up to keep in mind, because sometimes people tell me that. I'm like, well, that doesn't tell me anything as to what you want to do. And then the other thing I talked about the very first day I worked with you all was injury. So because I'm a PT and people see that in my bio, people love to disclose their injuries to me, or say my PT told me I'm going to PT right now. My PT said don't exercise, but I'm here, which is great. They shared it, but you know, even when I'm in a yoga studio, I'm not there as a clinician. I'm there as a yoga teacher, and that's what you all will be when you step into a studio or into any space. You're not their PT, physician, healthcare provider. So keep that in mind, because some people will be like, well, can you help me fix my knee? Mm-hmm. No, we can't help you fix your knee. We can provide guidance, we can provide, you know, some support, but people have to be in tune with their body when they're coming to a class and know what's comfortable for them, what's pushing the limits for them. Even if someone tells me like, I like have a bulging disc, like, thank you for sharing, like I can maybe adjust my class accordingly for you, but I'm not gonna put my hands on you. I'm not going to give you a ton of recommendations in class, because you know, I don't know the extent of your injury. Or some people just say, I have a back injury. Well, that can mean anything. So it's something to keep in mind as you go forward. If you start teaching classes, you start teaching a physical practice. Body can do a lot of things, and it can also get hurt in a lot of ways. And sometimes doing the wrong exercise can exacerbate that injury. Yeah. I think Laura doesn't like to ask people if there's injuries, but sometimes people will share it with you. So yeah, let's go forward and look at our muscle groups again. And like I shared last time, these are just major, bigger muscles that are the primary movers for these body movements. But there are other muscles that support moving into all these movements that we're going to talk about. So the first one is hip flexion. So that's bringing your hip up, so bringing your knee up towards your chest, hip flexion. So we have a couple big muscle groups here. So one is the iliopsoas. So we have the great image here, but I'll show it myself as well. So your iliopsoas kind of starts up here and runs across your hip. So that's your iliopsoas, and if you want to like really get into it, it's actually made up of two muscles, the ilius and the psoas, and they run pretty deep, so they're kind of underneath those core muscles. Someone was telling me that they did a psoas. Was it you? You were telling me you did a psoas class?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you like probably got in so deep when you did that, right? Was it? Someone shared that with me yesterday.
I said psoas to you, but I think it was something else.
Oh, okay. So if you ever do like a class that's focused on like the psoas, like you are like getting in deep, and you like, it can be painful. It can like bring up trauma for some people to go that deep in. And then the other one are your quadriceps. So they're these big muscles that run the length of your thigh. So they start up here, kind of at your hip, and then they run past your knee. So they're really long. There's quadriceps, so quad 4. There's actually 4 muscles that make up your quadriceps. So they help with hip flexion. And then the quadriceps also do another cool thing. They extend your knee. So they cover 2 joints, hip flexion, knee extension. Yeah, any questions about the front of your thigh?
Hey, I have a question, because why would you want to go so deep for some of those classes, especially if like there is that
Yeah, I
trauma
think
can come up from that
so.
deep? What would be like the purpose of having such an intentional class?
So I think like some teachers, like I like to teach to specific body areas. Like I did with you all a pelvic floor class, and I have like a neck class that I do. So some people want to focus on that area, and that's their choice. that's probably a better conversation to have with Laura than myself. Yeah. And I also, like, if I don't know the answer, I will tell you all and try to refer you to someone else who can give you a more articulate answer than I can. So she might be able to shed some light on that.
I do have a theory on that though. You know, as you go to different classes, yoga, power, I notice like the more power, the ones that are called yoga burn, I mean, they, you know, they just, it's just some more intensive workout. But yeah, there are times where, you know, I'm on the mat and you have to take it and you're like sweeping the floor.
Yeah.
And the next day I couldn't move. Because that psoas muscle was so worked out and burned out. So, yeah, I don't think there's any intention, they just do it because they like to, you know, yoga burn you.
For sure. And that psoas area, you can have like adhesions, like those trigger points we were talking about where that fascia gets tight and sticky. So some people like to just bring awareness to that area. Like you can get really tight in here. It might not be just your quadriceps. So I don't think people are doing it with intention of trying to bring up trauma. They're trying to do it to bring intention to your physical body.
Trauma stuff. I was just gonna say, last summer I threw out my SI joint, which I didn't even know that you could fucking do that. Ouch. Okay, so I threw that out, and so part of the PT for that was to massage. I had this psoas, I don't know, what it looks like a U, and it's gnarly, and you lay on it, and it presses into it. It's awful. And by doing that and strengthening my psoas, it helped make it easier for my rest of my body to get into alignment. So there's like a lot of times you have to work on something that's connected to the thing, connected to the thing.
Yeah, and some people do like the lacrosse ball or tennis ball in there. Takes your breath away.
But then also I just wanted to offer, if I can, around that trauma piece too, which is like often when we're doing like body stuff, right, our subtle body, energy bodies are being activated too, and that's part of healing and clearing out the channel and the chakras and stuff like that. So it's like not just protect it all, but you can until you can't anymore and you need to work it. So I feel like there's a piece around like the body's not just the right. That's why this trauma comes up because there's stuff coming up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's nice. I appreciate you sharing that, like, you went through that experience and you know what it's like to get through there. And yes, you're so right. Like, the psoas works in line with your sacrum, so to bring that back into alignment is huge. And yes, sacral pain is not fun at all. You feel it every step you take.
I was actually gonna ask if that like affects your lower back. Yeah, because my friend who's a massage therapist had me work on my psoas stuff before because I have lower back issues, and so but that was a while. I've forgotten about that till like right now. But I was also gonna ask if there's like certain. I mean, I'm sure there are certain poses, or I don't know anything like in particular you recommend for kind of like lengthening that, or.
Let me think on it.
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm not a very good person at being on the fly. I always have to give some thought, but I will come back.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then we'll also talk about, we're going to go into posture a little bit today, and that low back pain is common for a lot of people. I think some of it is from like our posture and how we've kind of been progressing with social media and computers and everything. But let's talk about the back. Oh, sorry, does someone else have a question?
Yeah,
oh yeah, sorry,
I
Izzy.
have a question and a couple comments. What is your SI joint?
SI joint is, I don't know exactly, but it's like a ball socket joint right here. Yeah, it's a little higher than you think. It's like in your hip, right?
Yeah, so
Or like high hip.
I can show y'all on my body. Well, I'm not gonna pull my pants, but right here is your sacrum. It's kind of that flat part of your back, and it's kind of in the shape of a reverse triangle. So it's like right here. And so your SI is where your sacrum meets your ilium. So it's right here. So your ilium is this half. So your pelvis, sorry, I'm gonna back up. So your pelvis is this whole area of your body, and it's connected here by a piece of cartilage. So it's technically two pieces that are connected. So each piece is called your ilium. So the sacroiliac joint is where the sacrum and the ilium meet here in the back. So here with the reverse triangle, where your ilium meets right here. And so sometimes that can be irritated, flared, can fall out of position. And so that triangle and this ilium can fall out, and you can have some extra motion there, or it could get stuck and they're not getting enough motion together.
Sorry, Sumo.
Yes. Yeah, go for it.
Can I either use my finger or can you just use my pointer?
Yes. Do you want to stand?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Just so I know.
I'll use your pointer.
Because I hear so much about it.
Okay. Do you mind if I put my hand on you?
No.
Okay. So this is your sacrum right
Uh-huh.
here, and so your SI joint is probably around here.
Okay. So this, it kind of goes like right here. What would be that part right here? Like,
So are you pointing to something bony or something
yeah,
soft?
it's the muscle against the bone.
Okay, so that is probably your piriformis.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're
That's
gonna
fine.
get into the piriformis
All
in a
right.
second. Here's your pain.
Thanks.
Great question. Yes, it's easy.
What does it mean if that pops? Because I pop that area a lot at the center.
Oh, if you pop it? Okay, so popping could be a couple different things. So usually it's what we call a cavitation. So when you have two joints that are together or meeting each other, there's a little bit of space. So in that space is gas. And so when you pop it, it's just like that gas is releasing. So usually popping is not a bad thing. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that gas is like moving within the joint.
But what about like pain? Because I only pop it if there's like a pinch there, and then I'll be like moving my hips, like trying to get the pain to go away, and then it'll like pop that spot.
Yeah, so some of the data they say is like if you're feeling like tight or pain and you pop it, some of that release is actually like more mental. So when you hear that pop, it's giving you more release than actually your body releasing. But again, I don't want to give you medical advice. If you're concerned, like go talk to your physician or go to a PT eval.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
No, all good, all good.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I'd never heard of that. I always was just like, yeah, it's just my low back. But yeah, and then about the psoas. So the reason why I brought up the psoas to you is because I saw this yoga teacher that I really admire her work. She does like trauma informed yoga, like specifically that's like her specialty, and she like offered a class specifically for the psoas. So like to answer, kind of not totally answer your question, but like to kind of address your question. Yeah, like it was like that's her specialty, and actually the class was like very mellow. It was very gentle. Like there was a lot of just like this kind of stuff, like very low to the ground. It wasn't like a super intense like burnout kind of class where it would be like sore, you know. But yeah, even to build on what you were saying, like I feel like, you know, we are more than just the physical body. So like the subtle body stuff can like always come up. And like I was in a yoga class once where we went into pigeon, and I've heard like lots of people say stories of like this about pigeon, like someone just like got up and like ran out crying because like it just like something just like opened for them, you know.
Yeah.
So that's like part of, I don't know why I really admire what Laura is doing to make our training like very trauma informed, even if we're not going to be specifically teaching in a trauma informed space, like to have that skill set to understand and to move with that mindfulness of awareness that like things can sometimes just randomly come up for people. Like they could have been having a totally normal day, and then all of a sudden something just moves in their body and like they get flooded, you know. So yeah, I don't know, just to
I
build on
love
the
that
conversation.
contrast, like that you both had, because when you were saying like sometimes they could be like a really intense class, and I'm like, that sounds like terrifying.
Yeah.
How do I not walk into that? You know, something like in the ball. You know, but when you explain like having it more intentional and slow, like that makes sense to me. And then like trauma coming up as like a natural process. So I love that like you both kind of gave that piece, because yeah, when you were saying it was intense, I'm like, oh, where do I find that on the list? So I think never go to that intense class.
But I think that there is questions we can probably ask Laura about too,
Yeah.
when we talk about a little bit more of the trauma informed stuff, because yeah, like knowing that this might happen and come up, like you're moving people's like physical body, or helping people move their physical bodies, energetic bodies, how do you hold that space? Like I have left the class before being like, what the actual fuck? How come like there's not a therapist on call here right now? Where are they? And I'm supposed to like drive and be okay? Yeah, so there is like a huge thing around the trauma-informed piece that I'm really glad that was helping us do that.
I have to agree with like the sometimes leaving, like teaching classes and like sometimes like pigeon has made me cry, like even as being a facilitator but also being like a student within the class. And even sometimes like goddess poses, a lot of like poses that are opening up my hips have made me very emotional, and I think when you have a practitioner that is very intentional and is able to hold that space and not like necessarily like move on, makes a world of a difference, because it can be traumatic to like, I don't want to say like having a mental breakdown, but like you're just came for a class and next thing you know you're crying and you don't know these people. I know I've been in a lot of like white space studios, so it's just like, what's happening? So I think it makes a world of a difference with like a very intentional teacher who is willing to like help you out throughout that, you know, emotion.
Right. I feel like also like sometimes I'm really surprised about like what comes up, you know, like as I was showing yesterday, like I have an old shoulder injury and it was never, I don't even know how to tell you what it is, 'cause I don't know what happened, but I used to break dance and I injured it and just like couldn't move it for a while, and I just never really healed it. And it's like I didn't actually think of like the emotional connection for quite a while with it until like one time I was like getting a massage and I was like crying, and then and like doing certain moves and stuff, you know, because it just is like connected to so much, and like so like deep stretches or certain movements will like really activate me like around my shoulder, and that was like just something it just like hit me out of nowhere. So now I'm kind of like, okay, like now I can expect it a little bit more, or like at least know it's on the radar. But like for me, it's like my back and my shoulder are like my activating areas, you know, and I know that it'll come up in varying degrees depending on like where I'm at or how I'm feeling, you know.
So yeah, I'm sure if you weren't expecting that to happen in a class and you don't know anyone there, it's quite an experience, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, lots of emotions.
And do you want to share like how you navigated that as a student?
So the first time it happened, I like felt like a lot of like shame around it, 'cause honestly it was a very white space, so everyone was like looking at me and the teacher didn't really address it. And shortly after, like she moved on and I just felt like I couldn't get it together, so I just ended up leaving class and having to deal with that trauma on my own, which thankfully I was in therapy at the time, so that was like really helpful. And I also had some like getting into the scope of yoga, so being able to work through that and journal was really helpful. But when I was in a trauma-informed space and it did happen, like the teacher was like so like kind, and everybody in the class was like really supportive, and it really wasn't like necessarily a white space where like the teacher actually like paused class and like allowed me to process it, because I told her that I felt safe to do so. And then like everyone in the class was just like sending really like kind energy, and we didn't get like too deep into like the issue of what was going on, but it made me feel really safe before we actually jumped back into class and like to continue the flow, which was really nice because I felt so supported and so seen, which was nice, even though I didn't want to be seen because of my last previous experience. So, and also I think something else about it is just like sometimes I've gone to yoga classes and people will do like heart openers, and then they won't like close the heart back, so like you'll just go through the whole entire class and then you're just feeling so much, and there's just not proper opening and closing procedures around it, or even the proper build up to it. So that makes a world of difference too, I'll say.
That's actually, thank you for sharing that. And I also, and the closing made me think of like, that happens similarly sometimes in Hawaiian protocol of like, sometimes we'll have like an oline or like a chant to open the space, or like to call in our kupuna, and we don't always close it. And it's like, you know, I'm still learning, so I don't know all the closing like fully, but that was something that I had never thought about actually, like, cause we're so used to doing these like opening protocols, but like not that closing of it. So like, thank you for that, cause that's like definitely something.
Yeah, because it's the same in our religious tradition. You close everything, and I stopped going into any white spiritual spaces. But I just open that up and I leave it. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah. I get very, like, I'll sit there for months. Like, I think I know where that happened.
I'm getting so many answers to all the questions I've had over the years now.
Hey.
I can't see, I don't know what's going on. I go to yin class and yeah, there's all kinds of drama going around me.
That, seriously, it's
And
not
they warn
safe.
you. They warn you, but I don't think people understand, and you know, when it happens, I think even they're caught by surprise. I know I am
I
sometimes.
think, like, one thing you can do spiritually to close something that's open is just say whatever the first thing was one more time. And it's like, I know it's a huge blanket statement, but if someone didn't close it for you or a leader didn't close it for you, just remember what the first thing was that was open. If it was a phrase or emotion, you can do it again and just say this is the closure for you. And you
Yeah.
can close yourself.
Right, I feel the same of like just kind of talking to Kupuna of like, we're releasing you, like you can go back to resting now, and like thank you for your presence, and like, yeah, cause I don't really know like that many Oli, you know, so it's like, just talk, I like that, yeah, just talking it through.
And sometimes just say, I'm closing this.
Yeah.
What?
Like just saying the statement like, I'm closing this, the
Yeah.
heart opener
Right,
is closed.
yeah, we are closing the heart opener.
I love that you brought that up too, because I feel like at some point the Hawaiian culture became performative and we lost
Yeah.
ourselves. And so like really bringing that back of like, this isn't a show, like we're not doing this
Right.
because the beginning only is that is what, you know, we want to see. It's always like,
Yeah.
you know, the most inviting, because at the end you're so drained of energy that like closing it is a very more
Mhm.
you process, and it's not as performative. And so I feel like as a, you know, as Hawaiian people, like we need to move back to what we were instead of the performance. Like it's not for other people, you know, like we're doing this because our ancestors did it. Like this is what we're supposed to do. I don't have to please you, because the closing olis are shorter and
Yeah.
more, you know, more minimal, and you know, not everybody is out there. Like it's
Mhm.
just like you were saying, like so simple. Like it can just be,
Mhm.
this is like we're done here with this space. Thank you.
Mhm.
Like simple.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, like just be important, like how we do closing circle, like that is like, anytime I'm like facilitating something and people don't wanna do like an opening and closing of like anything, I'm just like, or like, how are we gonna do the opening? And like, I was dealing with this with work recently actually, and like, them not wanting to do like a closing out, and I was like, dude, like it literally can be short, but like sometimes people just don't, they just wanna go, like they don't wanna like come back together and gather, but like, that is so essential, you know, like, so, yeah, thanks for that.
I feel like that really like applies to trauma-informed spaces and just like healing spaces in general too, because I feel like whenever I've like done any kind of healing or like been like a recipient of any kind of like healing process, like whether it's like energy healing or like a one-on-one private yoga session or like a therapy session or like whatever, I feel like it's really important to have a way that you kind of like close, not like totally close like your energy or whatever, but like take yourself out of whatever energetic space you were in so that you can go back into the world. Kind of like what you were saying of like feeling so raw after that class when like you were in Pigeon and all of that just came up. Like, yeah, sometimes I've been like, I've done like a healing process, whatever, like one-on-one in a circle, whatever, and then like afterwards I go back out into the world and I'm like a sponge and I'm like feeling
Right.
everything, and then like I get really anxious a couple hours later or like the next day or like whatever. So I feel like it's also important to just know how to like, you know, even if it's not like necessarily a trauma thing, but if you're just having like a really deep conversation with somebody or like in a room of people like this, you know, like having some kind of way to like energetically just be like, okay, like I'm no longer like gonna be this open anymore to like receiving all of this or to like purging all of this, like whatever way the energy was moving, and to be able to just like come back into your own like energetic space and then go back out into the world and to be able to like have that kind of protection and not be like just absorbing everything from all the people that are walking past you on the street, or like all of a sudden just like telling all of your trauma to like the cashier at the store because you're like you're just like yeah. I didn't mean to say that. Like,
Not killing your trauma so we can actually understood.
yeah. So I don't know, just something to think about. How does energy move, you know, and how do we create that, like, what are the methods that we like expand and close ourselves and our spaces to like have adequate protection? Yes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I love how you can take anatomy and take it to a whole nother level. Shift it around. I love it. Should we step back into the physical body? All right. Yeah.
I'm reading a book that it kind of overlays anatomy, subtle, the physical body with the subtle body. And I think it's called Yoga of the Subtle Body.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. If
Well,
you'll
I'm
have
surprised that we're talking
The
about
subtle body.
Yeah, we're talking about, hips and shoulders, and it leads into this conversation about, oh my God, all this stuff. But when I massage people, oh my God, as soon as I touch that area, certain areas, like I can tell you their feet, their hands, their neck. Surprisingly, not so much your lower back, but once you kind of work into that whole SI joint area, everybody just, now I understand what's going on.
Yeah, that book is on Libby, so if you all have a library card.
Hi.
It's on
What is
Libby.
it called? Yoga for?
Yoga of the subtle body, or something like that.
Yeah, it's yoga of soul body.
Yeah.
And-
T is little?
She has it on, yes.
Yeah.
And they talk about like starting class in Shavasana
Mm.
and ending in Shavasana. So I like doing that as well, because it's your opportunity to kind of step away from everything you were doing prior to taking class.
Could I also share something before we get back into
Please.
it? You spoke about the opening statement. If the group doesn't close it, something that's been really huge for me is like spiritual hygiene, which just feels like normal hygiene, as if I like wash my body every day. Is to learn how to energetically like call back our energy. And a mantra that I'd like to share with everyone is, I'm a fire sign, so this just works the best for me in water. But every time that I'm like showering or just needing water, I will imagine that the water's like running over my head, and I say a statement that was very similar to this, but I am calling back all of my energy that was taken or given with or without my permission. I'm calling it back, charged, cleared, and restored. And then I just send gratitude for myself and everybody that I've had an interaction with. And then I close it that way, and I just let the water run over me. And it also feels like a cleansing of my aura too, of like the auric debris that just comes throughout the day. And sometimes like even if we're not like physically touching people, because that's powerful in itself too, whether what type of work that you work in, or just having conversations with people, I feel like it's really important to have that conversation with yourself, and also to protect yourself, because energy is energy. No matter which way you bind it, it's here. So
I'm a
spiritual
fire
hygiene.
sign too.
Yeah? Yeah. What are you?
So I burn everybody in my family because they're either wood or something.
Can you repeat that affirmation one more time, or the statement that you say?
Yeah, I'm calling back all of my energy. Wait, I say, as the water is pouring over me, I'm calling back all of my energy that was taken or given with or without my permission. I'm calling it back, charged, cleared, and restored. And then I just say gratitude for whatever is on my heart, and then I close it out and let the water run over me. But even if you're not in water, you can just create a visualization of a healing light, whatever feels good to you, that's just flowing over you, and like even extending it out to your aura. And our tongue and our words are so powerful. So just keep that in mind when you're looking back for the things.
My friend actually has a guided meditation that's calling back our energy, and so I sometimes listen to that. I can post it on our thing. It's I don't know if you'll follow her, Brianna Tidabite. She's a DJ, a local DJ, yeah, but she also does like energy healing and stuff. And so that's like my favorite one that she does. Like she was the first person who I like kind of went through something like that with, and like I was like, this is amazing. So like so she has I'll post it in the thing. And thank you for that. I really like that idea of doing that in the shower.
Shall we step back into our hips?
Yeah.
No, I appreciate y'all sharing. It's great. I don't want to end the conversation if we're not ready to. But next we're going to talk about the back side of your thighs. So our hip extensors are made up of our hamstrings. So the long muscle that runs down the back of your thigh. So actually, if you are looking up here, there are two muscles that make up your hamstrings. And then also your gluteus maximus, so the big, large muscle that makes up your butt, your backside area. And then your hamstrings are kind of like the opposite of your quadriceps. So your quadriceps did hip flexion and knee extension. And your hamstrings do the opposite. They extend your hip and they flex your knee. So they're back here. So as you flex your knee, you can kind of feel in the back some motion going on. So those are your hip extensors. Any comments or questions on back sides of your thighs? No? Okay. We shall move on. So our hip external rotators. So this is kind of what Keith was talking about. So what we're looking at here is actually our sacrum. So this is your sacrum, so that triangle that's right here. And these bones on each side are your ilium, so they make up your pelvis. And then all these muscles we're talking about here, your glute max, well not glute max, but your median, your min, and your piriformis are all small muscles that are in your butt. So your piriformis, which I think is what you were describing, Keith, when you work with someone with massage, that outside band of your butt kind of gets a lot of people. So that's what does most of your hip external rotation. So if you have your foot facing forward and you turn it out towards the side, so if your right foot is facing forward and you're turning your foot out towards your right, that's your piriformis. And so it runs along your butt all the way out towards your hips. It runs horizontal. Yeah, super common. I think almost all of us have some piriformis tightness going on, so that figure four stretch can get into your piriformis. Sometimes a lot of times pigeon, that front leg hits the piriformis. And a lot of people have trigger points there. So like you were saying, like people can become emotional getting into that area. It can be painful, it can bring up stuff. So that's like another area to be mindful of if you're targeting that in a class. I mean, it's really helpful to get in there to provide some stretch from that physical body sense, but like you all are sharing, from that subtle body, from that trauma-informed side, it can also bring up, emotions and a lot of things for people.
So Suma, from a yoga standpoint, from a yoga instructor standpoint, like, so can I lie down? On the floor?
Please.
So I just want to make sure I have talking about the right muscles. So, like if you do this and you pull this thing over and you pull it up, is that what it's?
Kind of, yeah. So as you're pulling it over, you're feeling that little bit of a stretch in your butt.
Yeah, you would also feel it like if you do one, like this.
Yeah, so your piriformis is firing, it's activating as you go into that external rotation. So to stretch it, you gotta go into a little bit of that internal rotation and adduction. So like you were showing, crossing over the midline puts it in stretch. So you're correct.
Okay, I mean, pigeon helps, but I notice that you can kind of cross it over.
Right.
And pigeon can be so intense, not just for the subtle body, but physically. That is so much work and mobility in your hips. Like that's that's not always the most accessible position for a lot of people. Yeah, and there's so much going on in pigeon. It's not just that external rotation, so you can't really focus on just that specific area of focus. Yeah. Cool. Can you run back over to the computer? Alright. Come back on. Okay, core. So this is what we were talking a little bit about yesterday and kind of what we brought some focus to today. So the transverse abdominis, which we also can call TAs, those are your stabilizer muscles, and they run really deep. So they run the closest to your bones and your organs. And then on top of that muscle is your rectus abdominis, which are those we call them the six-pack muscles. If you see someone with a six-pack, you're seeing their rectus abdominis. So that does trunk flexion, so bending forward. So if you're doing a sit-up or a crunch, you are utilizing your rectus abdominis. And then also you have your obliques. You have internal obliques, external obliques. There is way more to it. But really the obliques are helping with everything trunk rotation. So anytime you twist, you rotate your body, you're doing those Russian twists or reaching across midline, you are utilizing your obliques. Yeah.
Is the rectus abdominis all the way down that strip?
Yeah, so
Almost rib cage down to.
exactly. Do you see how it's kind of going in that diagonal pattern here and here? So yeah, it runs all the way down.
Okay. And then rectus abdominis goes all the way
All the way down. So these are your
Yeah. I wasn't sure if the fascia in between.
Yeah, so that is fascia in between. So do you see here there's this white line? So see that there's a white line running kind of in the middle of your abdominals, kind of where your belly button is. So this is what can separate when you're pregnant. And so that's what the concern is a lot of the times when people are going through pregnancy and then coming back from pregnancy, that can space and then these muscles will widen. And then sometimes people have to have surgery to bring them back in, or you have to do physical therapy or different exercises to bring them back in and keep those muscles side to side. Because as they stretch apart, you're going to lose strength here. And then, we were talking about, the core and your pelvic floor are all connected. So if you're having that stretching here, that diastasis recti, that's just also looking for trouble in your pelvic floor. Yeah. And as you're going through pregnancy already, you have so much pressure on your pelvic floor, your bladder, and then adding this in, you're looking potentially to have incontinence and other pelvic floor dysfunction. Yeah. Great question.
So I have a question. So,
Please, yes.
maybe I'm feeling my hip girdle or hip,
Uh-huh.
but so it's I guess the inner groin or the upper thigh.
Uh-huh.
Is that part of the quadriceps or is that part of the core?
So the inner thigh,
The real upper inner thigh.
upper inner thigh. So that is probably what we call the adductors. So that is an area that can get really tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so adductors, if they're activated, they're bringing your leg into midline towards your body. So if you're sweeping your foot away from your body, you're putting it on stretch, and that probably feels tight, right? Yeah, so those are your adductors.
That's, only for me, that's my Achilles heel.
Adductors. I feel like anything that connects to the hip is tight for everyone. I keep saying quadriceps can be tight, hamstrings can be tight, but really I feel like all of us tend to have really tight hips, and all of it's connected. Yeah.
What exercises target the TA?
So the TA, it can be hard to target and for people to be able to activate. But sometimes going into that more of Navasana boat pose position can be helpful for getting in there. Yeah. So you're doing that deep hollowing out of your core. can get in there.
Just like any, like, I don't know, not like.
Oh, I guess I'll also talk about the pelvic floor real quick while we're here. So your pelvic floor sits kind of here. It's like a basket that holds everything together.
Okay.
So that's why it's all connected, because behind this is your pelvic floor sitting here, holding all your organs up as well. So it's,
I'm imagining the diaphragm part two.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like we can bring up the diaphragm picture if you want to look at it. I don't know if you guys want to, but I can pull it up. So yeah, so this actually might be a better way to show where your pelvic floor is. So here's your diaphragm, and then your pelvic floor is further down here. So as you're contracting your diaphragm, you're inhaling, and your pelvic floor is relaxing, so it's dropping down.
What if you can't do what you're saying?
So that's like maybe where you might want to think about seeing someone who can support you with your pelvic floor. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was noticing even when we were doing the series that like whatever way that you were describing that you're supposed to breathe in and release and breathe in.
It sounds counterintuitive.
And I was like, wait, can I do it? I don't
Yeah.
know.
It sounds very counterintuitive because when you're inhaling, you're like,
Yeah.
yes. But that's also when talking about pranayama is really helpful, because diaphragmatic breath, you should be breathing into your belly. So as you breathe in here, it should make it a little easier to drop down here. But if you're breathing into your breathing into your chest, then you're like, everything's pulling up. But if you're bringing that breath down into your belly, into that lower section of your lungs, that makes it easier to think about your pelvic floor.
Yeah, I
That's
totally
what I was
know.
imagining. I was imagining my diaphragm going up in my pelvic floor. Like, okay, I'm not the nerd, but I was imagining like internal Dragon Ball.
I love it!
I was an internal Avatar Airbender.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. That's a great way to like visualize your energy coming in and out. Yeah.
So that actually helped me.
Yeah, me too.
Should've-
Oh, can you say it one more
that-
time?
that totally
Oh, you
helped.
want to watch me breathe?
Yeah, just.
Okay.
I know it's kind of weird.
All right.
Very much right.
So if I inhale, you can see my belly is out. And as I exhale, my belly falls in. So yeah, I like to use that visualization of a balloon, like you're making your belly into a balloon. Blowing out that balloon and then letting it go.
So, are you saying when your belly is expanding, your pelvic floor is supposed to be like relaxing and dropping?
Correct.
Understood. Right.
Yeah.
Wait, can you say that? Can you say that again?
So when our belly is expanding, our pelvic floor is supposed to relax,
Correct.
almost like a dropping sensation.
Correct.
Interesting. New level of
Totally.
It is definitely different. Like, even like when I went through it last year, I was like, we're not trained in this in PT school about pelvic floor. I didn't even know about it until last year. Like, I had some vague idea, but really to match my breath with my pelvic floor is like next level. It definitely it took me such a long time, and I feel like it takes other people time to sequence and coordinate.
I love your balloon reference. I feel like that would have helped because I know like in pelvic floor sometimes they use like this elevator, but like
Yeah, the
I'm like
elevators.
that's an assumption that I have the strength for my elevator to go to floors, and like I don't feel what you're trying to tell me to feel.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was like an issue versus like trying to fill a balloon versus like my elevator's not going anywhere. You know, like elevator go up, elevator go down. You're just like I don't feel that. It gets really frustrating because you're like it's not. There's no floors. Like there's just one, and so like just thinking of like she's trying to expand the balloon and get to a different place is such a beautiful imagery.
Yeah. Have you seen those like toys? I don't know if your kids have it. Like it starts out small, and then as you pull it, it expands.
Oh, yeah.
Are those like those Connect toys?
The kaleidoscope looking thingy, right?
Oh, that ball
Yeah.
thing,
The
like
ball
this
thing.
big?
Yeah, so that's also a
Okay.
nice way to think about breath, and I wish I had one with me. But that's like a great way to like bring in like an actual visual aid,
Yeah.
is like having that like ball connect thing, starting out small and then opening it up wide. Yeah.
Thank you for the shout.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You have to see me breathe. My belly get big and small.
Is that considered ovarian breathing?
Ovarian breathing.
Yeah.
Oh, I've
It's
never.
like a breath work that I was reading in a book.
Uh-huh.
And the kind of what you were saying about the belly breath and then like feeling your pelvic floor kind of relax.
Uh-huh.
Sounds similar to it.
I've never heard that term, but I need to write it down
I know.
so I can look it up.
Yeah.
I think the book is called, well, I know the book is called Healing the Tao, Healing Sexual Energy. It
Okay.
sounds really familiar.
Remind me at the break because I don't have that kind of thing, but I do want to write that down.
Apparently it's
Yes.
called a breathing ball.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, really slow and on Amazon. Yeah. It's like,
Breathing
it's really small and then gets big.
Yeah, okay.
Expandable breathing ball.
Perfect.
That's so funny that it's a breathing ball.
Toy
Like,
sphere.
Now they've remarketed it.
The kid looks like really peaceful. The kid-
I know, right?
I'm so at peace with my breathing ball.
Sometimes in kids yoga classes, you'll see teachers bring that out to show kids
Oh.
how to breathe because it is like tangible. Like
Okay.
if you're seeing it, then you can kind of envision breathing. Yeah. Another nice one for breathing that I like to use is like smelling the roses. Like you want to take a deep breath in to smell something really good, and then blowing out the candles.
That's a good one.
Alrighty, are we ready to go to the back now? Alrighty, so these are your back extensors. So these are the muscles that are helping you go into extension. So if you're flexing these muscles, if you're activating them, you're extending. But if you're putting these muscles on stretch, you're probably going into like a little bit of flexion. So your trapezius, run all the way from your skull, all the way out to your shoulder, and then swing back down towards your low back area. Pretty large muscle. So yesterday, when we did a little bit of that self-massage up here in the skull, you're probably hitting your trapezius a little bit. It might take a second. Alrighty. And then down here are your latissimus dorsi. So it starts from underneath your armpit and then sweeps all the way towards your mid-back, low back. So that's the muscle I was saying, like if you're watching those Olympic swimmers, if you're looking at Michael Phelps, he has those big muscles that kind of look like wings as he like gets out to swim. Those are your lats. And then up here at the top of your neck, coming down towards your shoulder, are your levators. And then you also have your rhomboids, which kind of run right here. And that's another area where people have trigger points, or common area for trigger points. I know myself, I have like 2 on my right side.
Sorry, Sima.
Yes.
Can you?
Sure.
Because, like, where would it be on that?
Which ones?
The wrong
The rhomboids, so like right here.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. When you said trigger point,
Right.
Do you notice that when you're helping people, when
Yeah.
you're supporting people with massage?
yeah, usually, I do it with my elbow. I mean, it's very gentle.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I think we're all in line for a massage.
Yeah,
well, in Thai style, you kind of lift your shoulder blades up and then
Yeah.
you grasp
Yeah,
your
and
hand and then
Oh, yeah.
you kind of rub in there like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even tolerate that on my trigger point. Like I can barely handle like someone putting their thumb there for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So some people can be like very sensitive.
I didn't realize that there's 2 different muscles on the back. I thought it was like mirrored.
Oh yeah. So no, these are mirrored.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I
So
was
they're
like-
on this side as well. These are on
Oh,
that side.
okay, I'm like, how
But
come we
they
have 2
they
different
overlap with each other.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's why this image is showing
Right.
one set on one side and then the other
Got
side.
it.
And then there are more muscles in the back. These are just the ones
I
or like
clicked it.
big movers.
I clicked it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So trigger point, is that when the muscle is like swollen and like is getting through the fascia?
So it's actually the fascia that is becoming like
Yeah, it's like a hard little knot.
exactly. So it's generally the fascia that is feeling sticky and like a hard nodule. Because
Okay.
generally the fascia is supposed to be like soft, pliable, moving really well, slippery. But if there's some dysfunction, it's gonna get sticky and not mobile. Hi. Oh, good.
If you self-massage, you can use like a tennis ball or something
Yep.
on your back.
Mm-hmm.
But don't roll on it, just like lay on it, and then you'll just feel it like it'll just all of a sudden soften.
Mm-hmm.
And once it softens, then you can kind of roll it.
They also have that.
On that trigger.
Oh yeah,
Just letting it
the
rest.
cane thing.
Yes. So yeah, my cousin had one of those ones that you can get that like loops over your back, like you hold on to it in the
Yeah.
front and it loops over, and you can like massage it out. And like one time I had like my neck was like totally stuck, and I used that, and I was like, whoa, it's like game changer. I think it's like $15 online or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
It
have-
can be used as a weapon with children. We have
Yes. Oh yeah, no, when
It's
we
pretty
first I was like,
solid. Yeah.
nothing, like puts it away. Good call, good call.
Keep it, yeah.
Use with caution.
Keep it high.
It might just be my kids that are
Oh
like,
no,
yes.
it's awful. That's how you move it. Yeah, you have to.
So Suma, in yoga asana, what postures would work? I noticed like the bicep and the latissimus, the lats, the latissimus dorsi.
Uh-huh.
Those are the two muscle groups I just can't seem to find a posture to help those or to strengthen those.
Okay. So for lats,
You can come over here, so if you want.
going into what is that? Not what is it? I can't think of the name, but like reverse boat where like your belly is on the floor.
Oh, locust.
Locust, thank you. Locust is great for
You're pulling.
because you're going into back extension.
Yeah.
And then biceps.
Sorry, I know it's a
No, no,
spot
no.
question. You can
Biceps
go
should be
back.
super easy. Why is it not coming to me?
I mean, just like plank.
Plank, yeah. So plank is kind of that isometric hold if you're just holding it. And so you're getting, but if you're going into that push-up or chaturanga dandasana, then you're getting a little more tricep activation there with lowering down to the ground. So taking that push-up back up towards the top would then put you into a little bit of bicep use. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let me think about bicep. It should be super simple, but it's not coming to me. But let's go to the shoulder flexors. So yesterday I was sharing that the deltoid is actually made up of 3 sections, and each section does a different job. So the front part of your deltoid is right here, kind of the top of your shoulder, the part of your shoulder that's closest to your chest. So that front part of your deltoid helps with shoulder flexion. And then also your pecs, which are these muscles that sit on your chest, help with shoulder flexion. So if you wanted to play around with that, you can kind of feel your chest tightening a little bit, the front of your shoulder tightening a little bit, those muscles activating. Great. And then next we're going to go into shoulder extensors. So we have a lot of muscles that help with shoulder extension. And it's kind of the same group. Some of them are the same muscles that help with back extension. So like that trapezius and your latissimus dorsi, they do back extension. They also do shoulder extension. And then the back section of your deltoid. So if you're looking at your shoulder, the part of your shoulder that is towards your back, that part of your deltoid is helping with shoulder extension. And then also your triceps. So when you reach back, your triceps are extending also. On this part I just put for fun, we don't have to talk about it, but shoulder abduction and adduction. So your biceps are helping with abduction, so moving away. And then a little portion of your trapezius and your deltoid. So there you go, Keith. Anything that does shoulder abduction can also support with strengthening your bicep. And then shoulder adduction, your latissimus dorsi are helping with that, and your pecs are helping with that. And this was also something to think about. So in this image, someone's holding like a weight. So if you're gonna do an isometric contraction, which is the first image on top, the muscles are contracting, but they're not moving. So if you just hold out here, making a fist, you're trying to make a muscle, you can feel your muscles are burning and working, but they're not moving at all. So that's an isometric contraction. And then the second one is concentric contraction. So if you're making that muscle bulge, so if you're doing like a bicep curl and bringing your fist closer to your body, you're contracting your bicep here. And then eccentric, which is the third image at the bottom, you're lengthening. So if you have that bicep curl and you're pushing that weight away from your body, you're lengthening your bicep. So something to think about is when y'all go downstairs, sometimes that takes more work than coming upstairs.
Yeah.
It's because you're using that eccentric contraction. And when you're thinking about eccentric contractions, you're thinking about control. You're controlling your movement. So as you step down, you're using control. When you're utilizing concentric movements, it's all about power. Like when you're stepping upstairs, you don't really have to think about, being graceful or coordinated so much. You're just using that pure power to hoist yourself up. But coming down, you have to use that control or you're just gonna face plant, fall down the stairs.
Like when I do pull up, when they say to go down slow,
Oh.
because that's where the brain stays.
Exactly. Do we want to talk about the fascia again? Are we feeling good about it?
I love a
So
good
this-
fascia talk.
Okay.
I learned about it from my friends who are massage therapists, and I was
Okay.
like, what? Yeah, so I always am down to learn more.
The fascia is bananas. It's everywhere in our bodies. It lines everything. It lines our skin, our muscles, the muscle fibers. I don't know if y'all can see on here. Let me push it this way. So each muscle fiber is surrounded by fascia, and then as that bundles together, it's surrounded by another circle of fascia, and then as it becomes a bigger muscle, that's also surrounded by fascia. It lines all your organs. It is there for every part of our body. And so like I was describing, usually it's flexible, it's movable, and if there is some type of dysfunction or something going on, some tightness, that fascia could become a little tighter and less mobile, and some people find that as a trigger point.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a PT question. I know you don't like to cross over, but so there is this tool called a gua sha,
Uh-huh.
but there's also like a metal version of it.
Yeah, the Graston device.
Graston. Okay, thank you.
So the Graston device, so if you want to buy the actual Graston device, you can't buy it without taking the course, which is like $600 or $700. But you can buy like a $20 version on Amazon. Yeah, I should have brought it with me. I have the Amazon version.
What is like, because I've had gua sha, my daughters have the PT version, but what is the difference between gua sha and having the gas device?
I can't speak to gua sha,
Okay.
because that's not like my practice,
Yeah.
and not my culture. I don't feel comfortable talking about the
Okay.
difference between the two.
What's the one that you said? What's it called?
Graston,
Oh,
Graston, I think. I think it's the person's name who came up with the protocol.
I had a massage therapist that used all of this, and they're like, even like some face ones.
Yeah.
It was
it's really good. But it'll bruise you up and
Yeah,
beat
it's
you
not
up.
cute.
On your face?
Oh no, but I guess they could if you really want to loosen the facial fascia, but you know, like on your hips and.
Myself going to work like, there you go.
Yes, they can use things too, but I was just wondering like what the difference in the movement and what breaking them up would be, because it seems so similar, other than like one tool is way more like intense looking than the other one. Because I've had both, but I've been bruised from gua sha, you know, and my daughter had like the
On
other
the
tool.
heels?
Yeah.
It's very common to be bruised, from my experience.
Yeah.
You know, when I was going to physical therapy myself, yeah, man, they get in there and they're just
Trying to break it up.
breaking up the muscle, just with the blade. It's like a dull blade, and you put.
It's not.
It's like gonna sound more and more.
It cannot cut you. It's not like.
It can't cut you, but
Yeah.
you are gonna be cringing and.
Is that good? Like, I feel like to bring up one piece of tension to that, is it worth the rest of the tension that I'm going to be like bracing and like over here now, this is all.
No, you have to effing relax while you're getting beat up.
Is that what the bodybuilders do? I feel like I've seen some videos and they have like this metal thing and.
They're
Everything's
scraping.
breaking up.
Probably.
Have you seen the Fashion Blaster?
No.
Okay, it's like an internet SNL thing. So I just want to name that. But also, there's this lady that she has this, I don't know what it is, it's like a bar kind of thing, and it has rollers in it. And you break it up, and like the pictures are like literally like bruise, 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 bruise,
Yeah.
bruise, 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 bruise. I don't know.
She's a ballerina. She's like
She's
on
just a
TV.
gal on TV.
She does those things herself, yeah.
A lot of.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a lot
They
of.
do good.
I've been there.
Yeah, I mean, it is good, but then your skin is like,
Yeah, your muscle.
not
That's
very
so tight.
Yeah, I think like every practitioner is also different.
And they're like.
Yeah, they already have to press
Yeah.
that hard.
I never heard of that. I have no idea what that was.
Alright, shall we do one little group work and then we can take lunch after that? Okay, so I think we have 9-ish, so maybe 3 groups of 3 or maybe more than that, a group of 4. But I would love for each group to choose at least 2 asanas, so you could choose any of the ones that I have here on the list, or you can choose anything else you want to do. And so with that asana, I want you to think about what muscles are being activated, like what muscles are you using to be in that position. So take your time. You guys can go back into the studio if you want.
I have a question.
Yeah,
For
go for it.
everybody, my question is for everybody, sorry. Does anybody have a pad?
I do.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm like standing there for so long, like